We're at the end of another year, which means another The Game Awards hosted by Jeff Keighley. And this year it's a bit more of a joke than previous years, which is surprising. So let's get right into it. So first off, my name is Ojiro. I've been a game developer for a bit over 15 years. If you're new, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. So to start out, the Game Awards makes up, with their voting pool, 90% from a jury, with the following 10% from actual people that play the games. Now, this is not inherently bad, as long as you have a decent jury that is experts on the subject matter of video games. However, we would have a jury list that was given to us by the Game Awards. We've got publications like Entertainment Weekly, the LA Times, Pride.com, Rolling Stone, Variety, and NPR. Now, generally with any of these things, you want a certain level of legitimacy that goes around with your particular award show or organization. And I don't see it being delivered here, with exception of a decently produced product when they actually do the award show. Because if anything else, they have pretty good production quality of the show itself. People haven't been too kind looking at the Game Awards because they generally see it as a way for people to kind of shill whatever kind of game, even if it's not something that gamers at large particularly care about. It's not unusual for me to see something with Jeff Keighley hosting where it's just a parade of video games where I simply think, I don't, like, who is this for? I'm not even sure who is interested in playing these games. If it's an indie show, it's one thing, because I'd love for small studios to get any kind of visibility they can on their game. But for a bigger event, if you've got a game that just looks like garbage, it shouldn't be at that event. Like, it is the game's. I was going to say it's not the game's fault, but yeah, it is that particular game's fault. If your game looks like it sucks, then you don't deserve the limelight. You haven't put in the work. I'm sorry. There's no other way to put it. Now, some of the individuals that are the voting jury put out their opinions on certain things, like Polygon pointing out that Dragon Age the Veilguard didn't receive hardly any nominations. It did receive one nomination for accessibility, which is something that I don't even really look at in games, so I wouldn't call myself someone that's even capable of judging good or bad in that particular subject matter. We would also see The Gamer complaining that Black Myth Wukong is the lowest rated game to get a Game Awards nomination for Game of the Year. The Gamer and a number of other places, IGN in particular, did their absolute damnedest to throw Black Myth Wukong and the developer under the bus, to treat them as if they were these rampant misogynists. It has been a truly insane crusade that the folks at IGN have gone under. And we did see some publications changing their reviews for the game Black Myth Wukong after the fact to more negative reviews, once their colleagues at IGN reached out and said, "Oh no, you don't understand. We've all decided that they're bigots and they hate women, so you need to change your review." These are the kinds of people that make up 90% of the voting pool for the Game Awards. Now, one of the groups that is in the jury is kind of funny. I hadn't really paid any attention to them until just a couple of weeks ago. One of the individuals by the name of Andy Cortez went off on Smash JT on Twitter to make some claim that he and his wife were part of some cuckoldry site. If you want to have an opinion on anyone on YouTube, myself or others, that's fine. Leave their families out of it. It is super common for people to call people names right now. People you call individuals woke or call them shills or whatever it may be. Leave their families alone. There is no circumstance that I can see where individuals deserve to have their spouses or their children brought up to try and drag that person through the mud, as Andy Cortez did in this particular situation. I would see him again just a few days ago where he's talking about how all the people on YouTube that are complaining about DEI, we only have jobs because DEI exists, because we're there to grift off of it and we don't actually care. And DEI is actually really natural. And he's an idiot. There's no way to put it. I'm not going to post any of the video here because it's just a waste of everyone's IQ and their time. I'll put a link to the video in the description if you really want to make yourself suffer through it. He's someone that doesn't seem to actually make games, and is just someone that actually makes commentary and is your standard journalist person that has drunk the Kool-Aid, that is just insisting that things like DEI are actually really great. Whereas a lot of people that are against DEI, they're not against like the idea of having diversity in a game or inside a workplace. The issue is forcing that. In my case, I don't like it because it is a symptom of stifling creativity. And I believe in certain places, pushing DEI is actually flat out discriminatory and illegal as per state and federal law, depending on how it's done. It's a real cancer and is really against the kind of things like people like Martin Luther King were pushing for when they were wanting us to be in a society where people were judged by the content of their character and not their skin color or their sexuality. Now, jury aside, I was really surprised when I looked at the Game of the Year content, like the people nominated for Game of the Year. First off, I didn't expect Black Myth Wukong would be on here at all. I figured because it was 90% jury, the jury would do everything that they could to get Black Myth Wukong off, especially considering IGN is part of the pool, and IGN has put so much effort into dragging them through the mud. Another thing that I think is really inappropriate to be on this list, as much as I like it, is the Elden Ring DLC. I believe that if you're going to have a game of the year, it should be a standalone game and not to have us look at DLC. If you want to have like a best DLC of the year, I think that should be in its own category, because by and large, this is going to, first off, any of the Souls DLC, it tends to be really hard just to get there, and it is generally extremely hard once you actually start to play the content. The only Souls DLC where I was like, nope, I don't want to touch this, was in Dark Souls 2, because it's Dark Souls 2. I got in there and I was like, you know what? I could be playing Dark Souls 3 right now. So I just decided to be done. Elden Ring is an amazing game. I don't think it should be in here. I did see some people complaining that Persona 3 Reload wasn't anywhere in here, but we've got Metaphor ReFantazio, and that is, as far as those two games go, I think Metaphor is far superior. Any kind of like, I really hope the next Persona game isn't another high school era like setting, because I just think that's just done to death. So when you have some remake of a game compared to Metaphor, when it's by and large the exact same mechanics, Metaphor just is superior in every single way. I do think, just because of the jury, I would put my money on Astrobot in terms of what will be given the Game of the Year. I feel like most of the people that are going to be doing these voting, voting for these publications, are going to pick the easiest to access game. And they are going to just say, oh, well, Astrobot, it's cute. It makes me think of other video games that I would play or watch. And it's just an easy checkbox for them. Whereas a lot of them would have to, like, let's be real. Can you think of even like half of these games journalists even getting to the Elden Ring DLC? Do you think they could really defeat Mog to get there? No shot. No way that's happening. For some of them, I could see them getting into something like Metaphor or Final Fantasy VII. And I imagine there's some that were okay with Black Myth Wukong getting on the list. I don't see them actually voting for it just to get that snub in there at the last second. But again, this whole thing, legitimacy is one of the most important things for a lot of these organizations. I mean, you've got people like PC Gamer, for example, that are giving games like Gollum a 64 while they're giving Space Marine 2 a 60. Can we all really look at this and say these are people that are experts in video games? No. And on top of that, we found out that Jeff Keighley is trying to trademark the Game Awards, which is just insanity. Like the idea that you're going to try and trademark something so broad. Like, I get if you want to have your weird statue thing and you're like, this is my trademark. I totally understand that. But the phrase the Game Awards, I only see this as something to try and snub Stuttering Craig and Side Scrollers podcast that are trying to do the real Game Awards. I don't see it any other way. The application was filed just this year. It's just scummy. It's such a stupid thing to like. I look at this and I think, oh, they're trying to do this because they're afraid, because it's so easy for a lot of these organizations right now that are better equipped at understanding how to put forth a production to just say, hey, why don't we just run our own awards show? We've got a few groups that were like, hey, why don't we run an awards show for VTubers? Because it wasn't there. And since all of them are experts in streaming, it's not a particularly high bar for them. And they're going to be able to do it in a way where they can focus on what they want to do instead of what we see in the Game Awards, where it's a lot of, well, it feels like a lot of back scratching and backroom dealing and inappropriate behavior in terms of uplifting these publications that don't seem to have any kind of real like expertise when it comes to video games, to say that they somehow get the ability to vote. Like, there's one individual on here who's a YouTuber. I really don't know the individual that well, but if I look at tons of other like YouTubers, there's so many others that have way more views and way more subscribers as an individual. So like, I would understand if it was just legacy media, but if you're also going to throw in like content creators on YouTube or podcasters, there are so many others that are much better at making content towards a larger audience. And hell, for a lot of these individuals, they're going to get more views on their videos than a lot of these websites are going to get on their websites all month. Like, nobody visits these websites, and less get there every year. So if the Game Awards really wanted to try and build up a lot of legitimacy, they should be cutting out these places like NPR and be saying, who do we want to have from the YouTube front or the podcast front to come in and give their opinions. But I really can't see that where you have some of these publications that are so against people that don't follow the right politics. I just don't see it happening. I think you're going to have to do a hard swap, and I don't know if they're interested in doing that. But that's all I've got on this matter for now. Just a bit of a rant after going over all of this today. So thank you for your time. Subscribe if you want other future games related content, and I hope to see you again in a future video. Farewell.